we'll get started here. So first of all, just a little quick welcome to those of you that are going to be watching this on our recording. Welcome to the Golf Fitness Mastermind. Everyone that you see here, along with several others who are just not able to make this call, are a part of this mastermind group. And just want to give a quick introduction to each of us and to the group itself, because you're going to be hearing a lot more from us and what we have to offer you guys. So we're really excited to be doing this and starting our platform as far as really starting to grow a little bit of knowledge and insight into the golf fitness world. So welcome again. My name is Michael McDonald. I am at Coach Mike Mack on Instagram. I'm a golf fitness specialist based out of Charleston, South Carolina. And I am the creator of the Golf Fitness Mastermind group. And I reached out to all of these lovely individuals to see if they'd be part of this group with the sole intention of growing relationships first and foremost, and cultivating relationships with the best and brightest minds in the industry, providing education to those that are either just golfers in general or other fitness professionals that want to learn, and then just learning from one another. That's what Mastermind is all about. That's why I'm so open already and excited to now grow this and really build our platform in the industry. In terms of what the purpose of this group is, like I said, we're looking to provide value and education to golfers out there about the best ways that you can go about training for golf. That's pretty simple. We have discussions each month where we talk about the latest research and trends and ideas, and we kind of all sit together and figure out, hey, what are the best ways and strategies that we can teach people how to train? And the biggest thing that I think we can all share as far as like a value that are good, that are safe, that are effective for you, but ultimately that leads to increased performance, right? That's why we're here. We want to get better. So that is part of our job, to provide you guys with some of that value. So tonight we decided to hop on this little kind of spontaneous, we'll call it a roundtable conversation, and talk about a topic that has been kind of circulating a lot lately in the golf fitness world. Part of it was prompted by the workout video from Justin Thomas that I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably seen floating around. So we're going to dive into the topic of unstable training surfaces tonight. And we're just going to, we don't have a plan. We don't have an agenda. We know what we're going to talk about, but we're just going to allow each other to have conversations and build a little bit of a discussion as to our thoughts on the topic. I think it's safe to say a lot of us probably share the same thought. But that being said, we're looking to provide actual science and education and reasoning behind what we think, with the main ultimate goal, like I said, to be able to provide you guys with the value and the education to enhance your training, however that may look for you. All right. So again, I'm Mike McDonald, creator of the group. And if you guys just want to do a little quick roundtable here, why don't we just shoot through, just give us your name, maybe your Instagram handle, and where you're based out of.
All right, I'll start first. Dan Shipman, owner of Full Torque Fitness in Largo, Florida. And Full Torque Fitness is the Instagram handle.
I'm Darren Havis. I'm and run Par 4 Fitness, and Instagram handle is Par 4 Fitness.
Hey guys, my name is Nathan Jackson. I'm Niagara Falls, Canada, and Instagram handle is Nathan_Jackson.
Kevin DeShawn here from the Golf DPT. I'm based out of northern New Jersey and Manhattan. Yeah.
I'm Jonathan Avalos. I'm Athletic Golf Fitness is my handle, and I'm out of Charlotte, North Carolina.
I am Daisy May Kenny. My handle is at Biomet Golf, and I'm based in Charleston, South Carolina.
I'm Ryan Blackburn, owner of Orlando Golf Performance. Instagram's Orlando Golf Performance, and based in Orlando.
For Manberg, I'm based out of Clarksville, Tennessee, right outside Nashville.
Awesome. All right, I think that's everyone that's on the call tonight. Beautiful. So without further ado, guys, I think what's the matter? We're laughing over here. I think what we should do is just kind of kick it open. All right, again, we're talking unstable surfaces here. And I think if you want, I think a good starting point could be the Justin Thomas workout video as far as him kneeling on the stability ball. swinging the golf club or the super speed stick, and maybe that could launch us onto the path of what we think of unstable surface training and perhaps some reasons why it's not necessarily the best thing. So I'll start it off real quick. I think a lot of things that came with that video, the biggest thing for me was I got a lot of messages from my audience and my followers that are more like regular golfers, right? They're not professionals. And I think, so what happened was they reached out to me, oh my God, Mike, did you see this crazy video that JT was doing? Yes, I saw it. And they're asking me like, well, is this something I should be doing? Or, is this a good exercise? So I never want to sit there and say something is a bad exercise or talk bad about anybody else because I don't necessarily know the situation. But looking at something like that, I was just explaining the facts based upon what I saw. And pretty simply, the risk versus reward in an exercise like that just doesn't really make sense, right? There's just a lot of risk involved for something like that where you're kneeling on the ball when you're one of the best athletes in the world. But then if you want to break it down a little bit further, when you're going about that exercise, and we'll talk more about this, right? When you're kneeling on a ball, we're not really engaging with the ground, which is what golf is played on, which is what all sports are played on. So we are big proponents of being on a stable surface and creating force through the ground and creating force production and power and strength. So when we take that away from an athlete, it's going to actually decrease some of the performance that they're able to go about doing and training. So that's something that really kind of sparked some conversation with me. And I know we all had a pretty good conversation about it. So why don't we just kind of kick it off and go from there?
Can I kick it off? Because obviously I work for Super Speed. In case
go for it, Daisy. Go ahead.
So when I saw it, I was like, "What on earth? Why did we even share this? Like, it's terrible." So, but there is a place for creating an unstable surface in super speed training, and there is a place for eradicating the legs when it comes to creating torso velocity. So one of our drills, I'm sure you guys have seen, is the kneeling swings where we're on our knees. Now that would be the proper way to implement, I guess, what that trainer was trying to do with him. But if you're working on torso acceleration, we recommend kneeling on a soft pad, and a soft pad isn't to create an unstable surface. It's literally to soften the knees and prevent pain, because pain's the number one thing that will slow you down. So I think that, when you're swinging a super speed club, I don't even think he was working on speed training. It looked like he was just messing around, like rotating it around his body. But obviously that's not a practical application for a super speed club. You want to swing it as fast as you can to reset that neuromuscular reaction speed. It's all over speed training. So yeah, if you guys and anyone has any questions in that for that fact, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm the Director of Education for Super Speed Golf, so I kind of take a bit of a role in trying to explain the science behind all of these cool protocols that we have.
So that wasn't officially official protocol?
No, definitely not.
So that's one thing I should have mentioned, Daisy. That's a good point. I'm glad you bring that up in that video as well. So Justin Thomas, the thing that he's swinging, right, for those of you that are not familiar, is what they call a super speed golf stick. And again, the whole point of that, and Daisy could talk to this for hours on end, is you want to swing that as fast as you possibly can, right? And when you're in that position where you're kneeling on a stability ball, you're not in the place to do that. It's just kind of the very simplified way to go about saying that. That's another added component of why that drill was probably not the best choice for that particular time, right?
Agreed.
Okay. What else we got, guys?
Well,
I think
when I
just to
look
kind
at
of add to that, just to finish off the super speed thing,
Yeah.
it was probably just one of those things. It was the only club-like thing in the area that he picked up.
I don't know about that. They work in, I don't know. There might be some clubs laying around.
I hope not. But I mean, when I first saw it, I was probably one of the first guys to like get on social and give my 2 cents. But once I kind of said what I said, I was thinking like, oh, you know what? It was the closest thing to a club that he saw, picked up and started swinging it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you guys might see something else in terms of the intent that he was trying to accomplish. Obviously, our intent with super speed is to swing as fast as we can. So maybe maybe you guys saw it differently than I did. But I guess I was just trying to give the benefit of the doubt.
I think most of us just hoped it was for the sake of just showing off kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think we all really, as trainers, because we're trying to educate each other, like, this is what drives me nuts. Like, one of the things that we as trainers have as a goal, I remember watching Mike Boyle long ago, like, do no harm. There is such a chance of a player that makes millions of dollars. What if some freak accident happens, he falls off, hits his head, hits concrete? Now what's happening? Now he's out millions of dollars? Like, What if it's just the kid down the road? You know, like, you just cost that kid, like, who knows? You know, if he hits his head in the right spot on a piece of metal that you happen to have sitting on the ground like a kettlebell, you know, there, like, do no harm. That's probably what drove me up the wall, because I know that because of that video, I think we all saw another video of a kid doing it with the video of Justin in the background. You know, maybe nobody got hurt, but what if one person did? Is that okay? Not in my book.
Yeah, and I mean, a long time ago, you know, a client of mine with a former trainer was doing, you know, not super speed on a stability ball, but training knees on a stability ball, doing something with a band or a cable, you know. And I mean, he's not the most coordinated, he's just an amateur golfer, and, you know, ended up falling weird and hurting himself. He was out of golf for months. Like, and again, what Dan is saying, do no harm, right? And risk reward, what you're saying, Mike, right? Like,
Right.
Is there, well, one, I would question, is that any even generating more stability? And we can talk about that later. But is there a better way to create more stability that is less risk, right? Because I don't think, you know, Justin Thomas is going for power on kneeling on a stability ball. I think, again, most people who are training on a stability ball, training on a BOSU, unstable surface training, are probably after more stability, if I had to guess. And I guess, you know, is that the most effective way to gain stability, and are there better ways?
Right. That's well said. I think what I'm going to keep bringing the point back to is just the regular golfer, right? The regular person that's watching this, because that's predominantly who a lot of us are dealing with. And I think to everyone's point, we have to assess as coaches what's safe and effective and what's the most beneficial. Is there a better way to get this done? And I think we all could kind of agree in that particular scenario, yes, there is. And I don't want to necessarily pigeonhole the conversation to that specific topic, but that was just kind of the one that preempted this conversation. So does anyone have any more thoughts on that particular video?
I think the biggest thing for me was, I mean, Justin has such a following that it gets so many views, and it got up to over 500,000, at least on his Instagram alone.
Mm-hmm.
Let alone anyone that shared it on Golf Channel. I saw it did make an appearance on there, so obviously that catches more of the average eyeballs, probably the older ones as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, people see that, and then they come in the studio and they're probably wondering, like, why don't we do this here? And I mean, there's lots of good reasons, which I think we'll get into. But I think maybe I would give him the benefit of the doubt. They're just maybe doing it for fun, and he wanted to get a video of it. But I think people have to have the responsibility with that type of reach and that type of influence to recognize and label it as such, and not as something that's serious, because people are going to go try it.
And truly, I think it's, you know, I kind of said this in the story as well. And it kind of goes with Dan's point of just, you know, doing no harm. It's like, it was negligent in a way. I mean, like, all those channels picked it up and shared it. And like you said, the huge reach, Golf Digest, like Super Speed shared it. And yeah, they were kind of making fun of obviously it wasn't a protocol, but those who aren't in the know might be like, oh, maybe it's a new protocol they're trying to adapt. And so, like, just stuff like that, I think it really did kind of set us back a little bit. I mean, I could be on the one end of the spectrum here of just, you know, throwing it out of context, but I think it kind of took us a step back, and then we have to kind of fight twice as hard now to kind of catch up and move forward in that, because it is such a big name player that obviously was demonstrating this drill.
Yeah, I'd agree with.
I had the
Go ahead, Courtney.
same problem. I had every single 15 to 18-year-old client of mine send me that Instagram video, and they walked into the gym. They're like, are we going to try this? I'm like, no, we're going to do our mobility and our hip mobility and our T-spine. And then no, we're not doing it. But every single one of my clients sent me that video, and they weren't hanging out together. So they all follow Justin Thomas. So that video hit a lot of them, and they all look up to him. He's a great golfer.
Sure.
You know, my knee-jerk reaction on that one was, it was interesting. Like, a week before, I was listening to the Mike Reinhold podcast, and they just talked about something like that. And their big thing was, like, they're probably not doing that. Like, kind of like what we're all saying, the risk reward. The risk is not worth the reward. But rather, we forget that social media is it's entertainment, really. For most people, they're going on social media to try to find something and to be entertained. And that's entertaining. That's going to drive views. That's going to drive more people to Kobe's page, to JT's page, doing all that fun stuff. And that's exactly what social media is meant for. There probably should have been a disclaimer, right? Like I put a disclaimer on all my videos. They should have put, or whoever it was should have put one down saying like, don't do this or whatever. But you know, my knee jerk was, is it the smartest exercise? No. Can I see someone screwing around in a gym doing that? Yeah. Should they? No. But you know, at the same time, like it's entertainment. That's kind of what social media is.
Yeah, but I think that's a good point, Kevin. I think that's where kind of we come in, right? Or where I'd like us to step in and be a little bit more of the authority and the expert in the space to say, hey guys, okay, this is why we think what we think about this exercise. Here's the reasoning why. Here's the rationale why. Because we don't want people to get caught up thinking that this is the norm or thinking that this is what they should be doing. And again, as the golf fitness professionals, like Nathan said, we don't want to have to take that step back. We don't want to have to sit there and be rationalizing things to people. We want to make progressive steps to say, hey, listen, this is what you should be doing. Here's how to take care of your body. Here are the best strategies, whether you're a junior golfer, an amateur golfer, a professional golfer, right? And that's what the goal and the impact and hopefully direction of this group is going to be to you guys that are listening to this as well, is providing that insight and the value as to the why and to the reasoning behind certain things, and not just a bunch of random opinions being thrown out there. This is stuff that we all have learned on, researched on, and have dove into, and we just don't want it to necessarily be something where the fad or the cool thing that's going to drive likes or follows or sales is going to take the mantle as far as this is what golf fitness is. No, we're going to explain why it should be more rooted in science and background in terms of movement. So why don't we kind of do a little bit of a tangent here? Why don't we dive into a little bit more as far as what we think as far as the background science education into unstable surface training, maybe even a little bit more of what it is and why we don't necessarily think it works best.
Well, I'm pretty sure most of us have at some point read Eric Cressy's article. I believe it was called, hold on, I actually have it here. Of course. It's the 10-week effects of 10 weeks of lower body unstable surface training on markers of athletic performance. I know most of us probably at some point have read it, and it really comes down to most of the time when you train with an unstable surface, you actually are decreasing. You already talked about it a little, Mike, the ground reaction forces. When you have no ground reaction force, you actually cause the body to kind of change how it wants to move in terms of when you are on the stable surface. So then we teach the body to kind of do that. And when you're on these unstable surfaces, you actually slow the body down because ground reaction forces are where we get the power and the speed from. Without that, you teach the body to be slower, right? So the more we do things on unstable surfaces, the slower we teach the body to be.
Right.
Now, we also know from that article, there is use for unstable surface training, whether it's a Bosu physio ball, the pillows, disc pad, whatever, for more on the rehabilitation side, which obviously Kevin, being the physical therapist here right now, can like attest more to all that. I know I still use a couple of them, but I don't have somebody doing, standing on a Bosu doing bicep curls. Maybe I have somebody that, like, I had a rehab of a Achilles tear about 2 months after he got done with physical therapy. Like, we still continue to do some single leg balance work, just continue to keep it up. But I didn't have him swinging golf clubs on it.
I think that power, I think I read somewhere the power you lose is like 28 to 32% or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's substantial.
Unstable versus stable.
Yeah.
And Dan, that's a good point. With rehab, an unstable surface does have its place. If you're working on, let's say, ankle proprioception, that's one thing, right? Because you need that person to be able to walk on grass, to walk on. You're not always going to be on cement. It's not always going to be a perfect surface. So you need to teach that person just how to live life. Just like we want to teach people to be better athletes, not just better golfers. Before all of that happens, you need that person just to be a person. So in my mind, that's where unstable surface training really is effective, if anything, is teaching them how to be able to walk on something and just live in the normal world, less in the performance industry.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I think, and maybe Kevin, maybe you can talk about this too. Like the post rehab, is unstable surface training still as good or as effective as stable surface stability training for somebody who is post rehab, after their rehab is finished, and returning to life or returning to play?
Yeah, I like doing unstable surface during the rehab. Once you kind of get past discharge and once they kind of are at that point, I really don't introduce unstable surface training at that point. Dan said it, Nathan touched on it with, you get slower. Even if you break down JT's video, when he's swinging, his weight shift is completely opposite.
Yeah,
So
he's trying to balance himself. Yeah.
Right. So he's teaching himself in the backswing to shift his body to the left and then follow through to shift his body back to the right. When is that ever useful? Right. So I really don't use unstable surface training past the rehab, and there are other effective ways to train that are not necessarily unstable.
To that extent too. Well, I read something, I forget who wrote it, I can't reference it right now, but they talked about it as far as like an analogy to being on ice. When you, like, if you were to walk on ice. So when you walk on ice, what happens, right? We tense up, we get a little nervous, and so the extra stabilizers kick on automatically. And that's usually a lot of times the argument for unstable surfaces. Oh, it helps kick on your stabilizing muscles. Well, the same thing holds true if you walk on slippery ice. That doesn't make you stronger. It doesn't make you more powerful. It doesn't make you better, right? So I think a lot of times when you're looking to actually involve strength in an exercise, so whether you're doing a bicep curl or an overhead press or a row, there's no need to be standing on something like that. It's going to tense up your muscles. Your body's actually kind of almost preventing you from falling and from getting hurt. It's going to tighten up a little bit more. So when we're talking strength-based stuff, when we're talking power-based stuff, there is substantial evidence to show that being on unstable surfaces just doesn't do any good. There's no point. And you can get better results even just if we're talking regular stability, right, or regular balance. You can still gain that from doing work on the ground. You can train barefoot. You can use mixed stances. You can do single leg work. There is a whole other complete universe that you can access without having someone stand on an unstable surface.
Yeah, I was, I'd read a lot of research articles about unstable surface training, and, just in preparation for this call, I was reading up on, some of them again. And I thought it was interesting in that one particular research study was saying, they compared unstable surface training for the purpose of increasing stability versus just traditional strength training, not even focused on balance. And there was no perceived statistical difference between the two at the end of the study. Although the group that did the unstable surface training, when asked through a questionnaire whether their balance got better or when they redid the test, if they felt stronger, all of those improved. So there is a perceived benefit, even if there is no actual numerical or statistical benefit between the two groups, which I thought was pretty interesting.
That's very interesting.
But I mean, I guess that can go a long way in terms of a placebo effect, right? Like we all know things are, people do things just because it makes them feel good. But yeah, I don't know. But
no, a lot of the research is interesting, depending on what you're actually looking for. But if we're talking about performance, and especially if we're talking about higher level players, it just seems to show that right, there are probably other better ways. But is there a time and place for everything? Maybe, and maybe there is, maybe in the clinical setting or the rehabilitation setting. But actually one thing Does anybody have anything else that they want to talk about real quick about that? Because I actually have a little question that I want to bring up. Anybody
Just
good?
The
going
other
back-
thing to clarify,
Yeah, go.
or I'll go after Nathan. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, just going back to some studies and things like that. Like, there was also something about, I think it was Chris Finn who wrote this. It was quite a big, something like how an unstable surface guru changed his mind or something, some sort of title along those lines. And basically, I guess when he first started out training, he was really into this unstable surface training, put everybody on a Bosu ball, and he had a ton of clients because he was doing new stuff, right? And then over the course of time, after reading research, and basically, I think he got to a point where he was getting very little results with his clientele, started reading the research and realized that he was more or less wrong. I think he said something like the EMG studies at the time all said that all the stabilizer muscles are being more active, and that was great. And that's where basically people stopped and said, this is why unstable surface training is great. But what they didn't ask themselves is, does it transfer over, to the field or to the golf course or whatever? And we've kind of already touched on that in terms of, we know from the other research that no, it really doesn't. You're losing power, blah, blah, blah. But he also mentioned something about was it proprioception fatigue? And so if you're doing things, say for part of a warm up and you're on an AirX pad or a Bosu or something like that, and then you go deadlift or you go squat, you're going to be weaker in those lifts because you basically kind of fatigued or pre-fatigued all those other stabilizer muscles. So it was interesting. It was kind of an add-on to what you guys were saying previously.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Chris, I think, is a little busy tonight, but he is also a part of our mastermind group, so I'm sure he could probably share that full article with everyone as well.
Yeah, it was a good article.
Just to clarify, when I do say I do unstable surface training in the rehab setting, it's not necessarily doing front raises on a Bosu or a half lunge with a band around to do a row. It's like reactive balance. It's just static balance. It's things like that where minimal. It's not like the intent is not strength training.
Sure.
The intent is proprioception and making sure that you can stabilize the ankle. Full clarity.
Not to make other exercises look fancy.
Exactly.
Yeah, not so
Exactly.
that I'm engaging my core during a bicep curl, which is vital for golf.
Right.
Because how are people going to know which way the 19th hole is?
Gotta show them. Shirts don't fill themselves out. That's it, Ryan. There you go.
Life's too short to die with small biceps.
All right, so I have a question that I want to pose to you guys too, because I was thinking about this, and then I saw something somewhere. A lot of us are, I think we're all referencing unstable surfaces right now in terms of feet, right, standing on. What about flipping it? So hands on a Bosu or hands on a TRX doing a push-up. Are there any thoughts to that?
I use it some, but again, I'm not using it for power production. For somebody that, wants to just challenge a push-up that already has like good mechanics in it, sure, for a little bit more of a challenge, but I'm not doing it working on true strength or true power. It might be more of a warm-up exercise just for some shoulder stability during a push-up, or something like that. But again, I'm not doing it to like have them increase a tremendous amount of strength, or like I'm not having them do that and then do like a plyometric push-up. I don't need them to have their hands slip off of it or something and face first into the ground again.
One of the articles I was reading was looking at bench press and basically in a bridge position on a Swiss ball compared to your standard bench press. And the deficit that they were finding was, I think it was over 56.2%. So a pretty significant loss from that stable bench surface to the Swiss ball, which would be under the back.
Wow, that's substantial. Yeah, I think that just kind of goes to my point, right? We don't really use it for the upper body, but I think we use it for the lower body because it looks cool, or it adds a semblance of balance because we balance on our feet. But in either way, in either capacity, the primary focus for it should not be, like you guys said, strength gains or power or anything like that. So yeah, maybe a little, a little stir the pot on a stability ball to get a little core activation here and there. That's fine. planks, right? I mean, have someone do 30-second legit plank where they're creating tension in their body. Then maybe we can give them a little bit of an extra with a little stir the pot exercise or something like that.
Absolutely.
I do like, say for a bench press type thing with a barbell, adding bands to the ends with, their kettlebells or plates on the end to get a little bit of that perturbation type feel to things. And that's not really the same, right? Because we're looking at, I guess it is kind of the same in terms of what the gurus or the supporters of unstable surface training are trying to get to. Just, trying to create that unstable surface, working all the muscles of the scapula and shoulder joint and whatnot. I like that as opposed to, say, a chaos band push-up or a BOSU push-up. But what do you guys feel about chaos band stuff?
Yeah, I think the big difference there is it's a stable surface and you have an unstable implement that you're having to react to, right?
Exactly.
Which is the biggest difference because you have a solid connection to the ground still. So anything that's dynamic is going to be inherently a little bit unstable, right? But we still have our feet to the ground on a stable surface where we can kind of create ground force and create torque and create good mechanics from there.
In terms of the chaos bands, I feel the same way I was talking about with the BOSU. Like, if it's somebody that's been coming to me for a while, say I've had somebody that's been training with me for a year, and it's just one of those things I want to challenge them a little bit. I know they have great mechanics, no shoulder issues, balance is fine, and I want to have them do like a chaos band push-up. I might throw it in, but I'm not doing it to create more strength. I'm doing it just to give them a little bit of fun because I know we all do this. We all stick to the basics. We all preach it a lot. Like, yeah, you have to squat, you have to hinge, you have to push, you have to pull. But at some point of seeing in my face for a year, 3 times a week, it's going to get a little monotonous. So I got to get a little fun,
Right.
Not me, no fun here.
Mike, in the past, I've heard those who want to plank with, rehabbing swimmers have terrible shoulders, multi-directional instability. So I'll have them plank on it and then I'll give perturbations. And it's just kind of, again, more proprioceptive and being able to react and stabilize. Don't know if it was probably the most effective. I don't have much research for it, but kind of to Dan's point, you can only do so many like Y's, T's, so much rotator cuff strengthening. You got to change it up a little bit. And so that's kind of the extent to unstable surface training I've done for the upper body. People hate it because you can really be a jerk with it. It's fun for me. But yeah, that's the extent I've used it. And it's not for strength.
Right.
I saw something.
What else? Anyone else want to chime in here? Look ahead.
About, I guess they were a skier, and I had somebody basically, they were a surfer.
I want to bring that up because that was a great question.
What did they ask?
I'm about to pull it up right now. Let me see. If I could pull up my stories. Okay, so someone said to me, what if my other sports, meaning skiing, require unstable training? How do I find the right balance? Was this guy's question. So my first reaction was, holy crap, that's a good question. And I don't know anything about skiing. But I just I'm starting to go through my head, and my initial response was, I still think the predominant focus and direction of a program should be still geared towards stable surface training. Skiers, I'm sure, need damn strong legs, right? Need probably a lot of mobility in their lower half. So I would still presume that they still need a lot of that stable base training. Now, that being said, maybe skiing is a sport where there is a little bit more manipulation through the foot and the ankle, and maybe some implements could be used as far as unstable surface. I'm not really sure. Me, I like to stick to the guns. I like to stick to what I know. And I think, like I mentioned in the way beginning, there are so many other alternatives to putting someone on a wobble board. Do rear foot elevated squats, do single leg work, do multi-directional lunges. Those to me are going to provide a lot more stability than doing the unstable work. But it's something that I thought it was a great question, and I don't really know too much about it. Do you guys have any insights to that?
What do you
I would.
About the slider boards.
What do you say, the slider boards?
Yeah, slider boards. That's technically unstable. That's something that I would think automatically is a go-to for a skier. Something to get the adductors and abductors working with a less grip on the ground. But then, when it comes to a lot of these sports, they ski enough anyways. And so if you keep putting them in that position in the gym, they're just going to get overuse injuries. So maybe the sport itself is enough to challenge and just go out there and practice on the snow. It's high risk enough and is enough to challenge them to create that stability. But I haven't worked with any skiers. That's just what comes to mind.
That's a good point.
I would say there are very few true unstable surfaces in life, right? Like even water, like you all know, like when you smack water, right? It's hard. Like it does not give right away. Like it takes a second. So there is these like impact forces that immediately push back, similar to ground reaction forces. So in snow sports and water sports, even in those situations, I would say it's still more beneficial to have stable surface training, because that is not going to give as much as you would think.
I think we have to look at whatever the sport may be, whether it's golf, whether it's skiing, surfing, racquetball, football. It doesn't matter. Like, are we training sport specific, or are we training like specific to the sport itself? You know what I mean? Like, are we training to make them a better athlete, or are we training to make them a better golfer? Because I don't teach a golfer how to swing a golf club. That's not my job. I want to make their body better able to swing the golf club. So whether it's a golfer, whether it's a skier, whatever it happens to be, I need to put their body in the best position available so that their ski trainer, their golf coach, whatever it happens to be, can then do what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I ever worry about the golf swing or the actual ski? I mean, we need to understand the biomechanics of it so that we can do things that will help improve those situations. But most of the time, let's be honest, it's still a split squat, a lateral lunge, a squat, a deadlift, a single leg deadlift, Romanian deadlift, whatever it happens to be. It's still a lot of times those same maneuvers, right?
So that's exactly what I was going to say. Whether we're training a golfer, a skier, a tennis player, there is a good chance that a lot of our programs are going to look kind of the same, right? You're still going to need to do the same things in the body, because that's how we'll call stuff we would program for each other, for clients, or for random people that we met, would probably look the same. So I think that's why I tend to go back to that same answer, as far as stick to being on the stable ground, build your body, do the movements that we talked about, and it's going to have benefits across the board, no matter what your sport is.
A little side note, I do not know if this was her strength coach or if this was a ski coach. Standing on two slack lines or slack lines. Standing on those in her crouch position, pretending she was actually going through some slaloms or something. I don't know if it was the strength coach or if it was the ski coach, but there was definitely some unstable surface stuff going on there.
One thing that was mentioned in that Mike Reinold podcast was if you use high and low days, and you could use, so let's stick with this analogy or this example of skier. Stronger, but say on the low days, instead of the purpose of getting stronger, maybe you are going, using unstable surface training, or if you're a beach volleyball player, you're on the sand, you're jumping, things like that. That way you're still getting your jumps in, but at the same time, you're not trying to go for performance base. You're just getting your jumps in, greasing the groove. Basically, we kind of talked about that's not even true either. But it is obviously less stress on your joints and things like that. So at least you're getting a little bit of, if your sports on water, your sports on snow, your sports on sand type thing, you can still kind of get a little bit in there. But again, your goal is not to increase power, not to increase strength. But it was interesting. That was something I didn't think about.
Courtney.
Yes, there was a gentleman, he was from Bulgaria, from the World Golf Summit, and his name was Jordan, and he was TPI certified. And in the winter, all he did was teach skiing, and in the summer, all he did was teach golf. And he said,
I know him.
Yeah, Jordan. And he says it was essentially the same thing. So in the winter, all he does is work with skiers, and then in the summertime, all he works with is golfers.
Interesting. Not
I do
surprising.
look at skiing, and one of the most prevalent injuries is the ACL tear. It's normally like the last run of the day. So I do like the idea of a slide board. The only addition I would make is something where you need to dynamically control your knee, because a lot of times a non-contact ACL injury can happen from too much of your knee going in and then too much side bend to that same side, right? So if it's your right knee kind of caves into the midline towards your left, and then you end up bending towards your right. That puts a lot of force on that ACL. So if we can control that dynamically, that's probably the only addition, right? Golf, you don't really have that, but definitely skiing. I do like that idea of the slide board. Or
And one thing too, and we don't have to get off on skiing too much more, but they also have their feet are fixed in, right? So their feet can't move. So that's ACL, I'm sure, has a lot to do with it. So what else? Did anybody else receive any questions from anybody that they want to bring up to the group?
I want to bring up, because of unstable surfaces, some of the testing that I've been doing on force plates with footwear. Really spongy footwear. All the fashion these days is big old heels, big old bubbles in the heels, and then it goes down towards the toes, and it's shooting all the pressure and everything towards the toes, and it's actually preventing a lot of professional golfers from performing optimally. So I think that this unstable surface talk can fold into footwear, in that if your footwear is so unstable, you're actually putting yourself at a detriment to creating ground force and kinetic energy. And it's really important when you're training in the gym. I have my clients take their shoes and socks off. I think it's really important to recognize that footwear is inhibiting people more than we think, for the reasons that you guys have just highlighted, because of unstable surfaces. Although there is a point at which a softer shoe is better for some golfers than a harder shoe. It just depends on the person. And obviously it's not going to be really soft. It would be maybe, let's say, 20% soft. So I think that there's a limit for an unstable shoe, and it's also individual. And I think those concepts fold over into that as well.
I actually was looking at an article where they actually did some testing with force plates, and they were having people do depth drop jumps onto a force plate, but it had a balance pad, an RX pad, and they actually showed a 11.25% reduction in power because of just that RX pad. And that's basically your soft shoe right there you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. You look at all the old school Olympic lifters, they all actually were wooden soles. So you've got to have that firm sole to transfer the force and the kinetic energy. So,
yeah, if people are curious as to how to improve your balance and stability training, train barefoot and let me know how you feel.
Yeah, man, I guess I kind of asked on social media or whatever, questions that people had or assumptions people had about unstable surface training. And I think people who follow me or know me know my views on it, but, I think the overwhelming people just want to know, well, if it doesn't help my balance, how do I help my balance?
Okay. I mean, do you want to answer that, Ryan? Because I know you have the answer to that. So
I have my answer.
Go ahead.
A lot of answers, but I think we've touched on it a little bit, but I just kind of wanted to hear what everybody else has to contribute to the conversation as well. But again, I think barefoot training is huge, and just getting your foot functioning better. The foot is one of the most complex mechanisms in our whole body in terms of structure. And when we, obviously when we bundle it up and wrap it up, it kind of turns it into one solid unit and kind of does away with all that intricacy, right? So just being barefoot and kind of getting your foot functioning better is super helpful. And then I think, some of the stuff from FMS and Gray Cook, like with the half kneeling and tall kneeling progressions, is huge. And then, the different stances in terms of single leg, asymmetrical stance, symmetrical stance, and getting strong and stable in those positions. There's a lot to be done there. And then, the work that we all do with anti-extension, anti-rotation, anti-lateral flexion, all that kind of stuff, and how that integrates with your connection to the ground in those different stances and different positions, I think does wonders for how you balance and transfer force from the ground.
Hey, Ryan, I got a question for you.
Sure.
So let's say if somebody has like, and this is just what I've been kind of like thinking of lately, if somebody has really flat feet, would you prefer them still training barefoot and then load them up that way? Or would you rather them have shoes on if you're going to go for like really heavy lifts?
So it depends. I mean, I've seen some flat feet and some arches, actually kind of rebuild and gain strength from barefoot training.
Right.
Obviously, if it's painful, that's a whole different discussion. Sometimes they have orthotics or something like that, but I still recommend as thin or as flat of a shoe as possible to support their orthotic or their lift. And even in that situation, doing at least a tiny bit or some bit that's barefoot, just to kind of get that feeling or that proprioception of being barefoot and that sensory input. Obviously, we're not going to do all of their training barefoot, but
Yeah, so you'd basically like train like, I guess like foot stability separately than their strength training then?
yeah, correct.
Okay.
I think a lot of people use the cop out. Oh, I have flat feet. Oh, I have flat feet, right? I hear that a lot. It's like, well, you might just have weak feet, right? That
Right.
they don't know how to actually engage with the floor. So we can definitely make some. I mean, you can create an arch in your foot for some people. If pain is not an issue and it's not an actual thing, if you just have more of that flat, weaker foot, training barefoot can literally start to increase your arch in your foot and engage you with the floor. But yeah, minimal drop shoes are great for that as well.
And then I think we can also look at stability in another way. We all know what the bird dog exercise is, right? You can literally challenge people's stability using that type of pattern. Like, does it always have to be do we always have to talk about being on the feet? No, like I can literally challenge your stability. Give me a 2-pound weight and you on your hands and knees, and I guarantee you'll be sweating your bullets in a second,
Was it Nathan that just posted one? Like a bird
but
dog?
that being said,
Someone in the group posted like a bird dog row, and it's just another way, kind of like what you're saying, Dan. It is a great exercise that you may not necessarily be going after strength, but you'll feel it. You don't need much.
I think that was Joe.
Yeah, it's Joe. Yeah.
Oh, Joe.
I see a lot of like knee and hip replacements down here in Naples. I mean, my average client's probably over 60. So we're losing some of that feedback from the joint that's taken out. So we've got to develop more of an ankle strategy, more of a hip strategy in those cases. And so like kind of to piggyback off what Ryan said, like split stance, single leg, barefoot training, something that's really effective in creating some stability. And I would never have them try to step up onto the flat surface of a Bozu to try to do and accomplish the same thing.
And Ryan, to your initial question too, how do we gain balance if we're not training balance? You and I share a lot of the same crawling, being on the floor, half kneeling patterns, different types of movement variables that people probably have never done before or haven't done since they were literally a child, right? I mean, those type of movement strategies are going to do wonders for still proprioception and balance as well. So like we said many a times, there are a lot of different ways to go about getting the desired output. And very often you don't need an unstable surface to do that.
and then we get back to the whole, it's just safer that way.
Right. You're absolutely right. If it's safer, if it's more effective, and if it improves performance, why wouldn't we use that option? That's exactly.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, it is more effective, because I think a lot of people see it as, oh, we're being less effective but safer, but we're being safer and more effective, right?
Right.
So it's
a tough combination to beat, right?
right.
Exactly. And this whole everything that we're saying, and speaking to more of the audience here, everything that we're saying holds true for someone that's never worked out before, a recreational random client, a golfer, and the best players in the world. Everything that we're saying it's the same, right? Across all of these boundaries, we're going to implement those same strategies. Do we tweak the complexity and the challenging a tiny bit? Yes. But everything we're saying holds true and is effective no matter the demographic.
Yeah, that's very true. Like my amateurs versus my, tour players, no one in that spectrum has ever set foot on a Bosu ball. Their single leg training, their stability training on all fours, it gets more dynamic, more complex in some areas, but there's no point where we progress it to a stability ball or progress it to a Bosu ball. We just continue to build on their function on the solid ground.
What else, guys? I know we're kind of winding down here on time, but this has been awesome. I've really enjoyed this. Anybody else have anything to say about topic in general, unstable or not, anything?
I guess more for those who are listening, and we all have kind of a little different definition, but basically the difference between balance and stability.
Oh yeah, hey, go ahead. Do you want to talk about that?
I mean, the definitions I use, basically stability is the ability to resist unwanted movement. And then for balance, it's like, that was a little bit tougher. I guess I usually just basically maintaining equilibrium. But when you guys are talking about crawling and stuff like that, that kind of made a lot of sense. So obviously if you're on all fours, you're just trying to maintain equilibrium. So that makes a lot of sense to me, but I would like to hear what you guys have, if you guys have different definitions, because I'm not sold on the balance one that I have.
There's one thing that balance requires, which is the inner ear, the cochlear system. And I think you can't, it's like more proprioception. So that's kind of where it's kind of clears up the difference between balance and stability. Balance is more of a inner control, and stability is just muscle functioning and tendon functioning.
Would you say then that balance is more like a kinesthetic awareness of your stability?
Yeah. Yeah, sounds good.
Way to show up, Dan.
No, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably, that was extremely well said. I'm just trying to think about like, what's the simplest way to break it down? Like keeping your center of gravity over your base. I don't know. Like if it doesn't, then you lose your balance. I don't know. But I think what you said makes perfect
mass over your base of support.
There you go. Yeah. Right. I mean, that's kind of, if you're not doing that, you're going to be tipping one way or the other maybe, but.
Dan, say that quote again. That was the quote of the night right there.
That was good.
He can't repeat it.
He forgets it.
He's good for
I got it. Okay. No, hey, we got this recorded. No, but it's the kinesthetic balance is the kinesthetic awareness of your stability.
We like it. Nathan, does that help you out?
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Can we solve any other problems tonight? What else we
Hey,
got?
Daisy, I got a quick question for you with ground force. So I was listening to something and they were talking about how like the best sprinters in the world have like the longest toes, which is kind of a wild concept. And then marathon runners, like the best marathon runners have like short stubby toes, and it's all based on like how many times like the ground force they're able to press off. But with like super speed sticks and like how much heel pressure you have to have, do y'all see a lot of like the long drive hitters or people who swing really fast have a lot of contact within that toe and heel, or is that not a direct correlation?
I'll tell you the one thing, like there's a lot of bad information out there with regards to pressure traces, and the one thing that they've actually seen as a correlation to tour players and the further hitters is a tendency for the pressure trace to go from lead toe to lead heel. So if you look at one of the, the typical moves that all the long drives guys do is lift that lead heel and then squish it into the ground. And so like one of my theories, and it could be wrong, but it's the rate at which they exchange the pressure from toe to heel on the lead side affects rate of force development, which affects vertical force, and that helps with energy transfer. But the interesting about the long toes, I mean, you think that the length of the lever technically in contact with the ground would create more force, so it does make sense. Potentially the reason why marathon runners have squished toes and not as long toes is probably because the amount of repetition they have and the amount of toes get scrunched at the end of their shoes, but who knows?
So Daisy, for the common lay person out there, what you're saying is if a right-handed golfer swings, he would lift his left heel in the air
Yes.
and then firmly plant that left heel back down on the downswing. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly that. And then you would see a couple of months ago, Francesco Molinari, that was one of the only things he was working on ground forces, and it was a huge impact on his distance. His speed went up like, 5-6 miles per hour. So it's just, I like to call them floaters, people that don't connect with the ground, and it's like creating that kinetic energy. And it's amazing how much more speed it can get you when you really gauge a feeling and an awareness of it. Because you could think you're doing it, but you need to actually get on the technology to see, because sometimes you're not.
It's a good thing we don't have Brandel Chambly on this call. He'd be talking about lifting that left heel all day long, right? So.
And I think, what Daisy was saying brings it all back around to the unstable surface, right? If we're losing our connection to the ground, then we're losing our ability to generate power, right?
That's another one right there. Let's write that down. That's good stuff.
Well, technically,
I would
unstable. Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. I would encourage, when a player gets into pine straw or sand, I would encourage all the listeners out there just to watch what those players do. They're going to dig down into the ground, and they're going to find the most stable surface that they can to operate from. Like some of the worst shots that you see in golf are where players slip.
That's a great point there. Guys are
We're
closing out
just recording
strong
the last
tonight.
5 minutes.
I was going to say, we'll cut this, edit it a little bit. No, that was awesome. That was really, really good. And honestly, that's probably a kind of perfect way to end it. But anybody else? Last thoughts? Good. Well, this was awesome. Obviously, again, for those that are listening, we do this every month, and we have a ton of fun, and we have conversations like this. So we're excited to produce more content like this, figure out exactly the direction that we want to go as a group in order to provide education and knowledge to you guys. So we're going to be pumping out a lot more. You're going to see a lot more of us as a group. And we're really excited about being able to increase our reach and grow this platform.